Late-night comedy legend Jay Leno is known for his humor and resilience. But when Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso's revolutionary leader, delivers a heartfelt surprise message, Leno's emotions take center stage. This powerful and unexpected moment reveals a side of Jay the public rarely sees, leaving millions wondering what words could touch him so deeply. It was a Tuesday evening in Los Angeles when Jay Leno's assistant rushed into his garage, the place where Jay usually found peace among his vintage cars. "Jay," she said, out of breath, "you just got an unusual request from Africa from the president of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré." Jay looked up, puzzled. He had met leaders before, but never one who personally reached out. The message said Traoré wanted to share something important with him, live on a Stream Talk segment later in the week. It wasn't political, the note claimed. It was human. Jay shrugged. "All right," he said, half joking, "as long as I don't have to wear a suit." But later that night, lying in bed, he couldn't shake the question. Why me? Somewhere across the ocean, a man he'd never met had something to say, and he sounded urgent. The clock read 1:13 a.m. when Jay finally drifted off, unaware that this would be the week the world saw him cry. By Wednesday morning, the entertainment blogs had caught wind of the story. Jay Leno, a host's surprise message from African leader, trended online. Some people joked about it, expecting a comedy skit. Others speculated about politics. A few even mocked the idea. But in Ouagadougou, President Traoré's team prepared quietly. He had spent the previous night in a small village where farmers were fighting to keep their land from being swallowed by corporate mining. A man named Idrissa had told Traoré a story of loss, pride, and resilience. It was this story, and the photograph in his pocket, that Traoré planned to share with Jay Leno. Meanwhile, Jay's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Colleagues texted, "What's this all about?" Fans messaged, "Are you doing a charity bet?" Jay's gut told him this wasn't a bit. And for the first time in years, he felt nervous about a segment. Thursday evening arrived faster than Jay expected. The studio lights warmed his face. Cameras rolled. The audience murmured in anticipation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jay began, "tonight we have a very unexpected guest." He smiled, but it wasn't his usual grin. On the large screen behind him, Ibrahim Traoré appeared, wearing his simple military jacket, his eyes steady but warm. "Mr. Leno," Traoré began, "I have followed your work. I have laughed with you many nights, but tonight I am not here for laughter. I am here for truth." The room went silent. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn, creased photograph. "This," Traoré said, holding it up, "is Idrissa and his daughter. They do not know you, but their story is why I am speaking to you tonight." Jay leaned forward, his hands clasped. The audience could feel it. Something unforgettable was about to unfold. Traoré's voice was calm but heavy. "Idrissa is a farmer," he began. "In a small village in northern Burkina Faso, he grows millet the same way his father and grandfather did. But last year, his fields were taken by a mining company. He fought to keep them. He lost." Jay shifted in his seat, eyes locked on the screen. "This photo," Traoré continued, "was taken the day Idrissa's daughter, Acha, asked him why they had no food. He told her, because the world has forgotten us." The studio was silent. No punchlines, no laughter. Traoré leaned closer to the camera. "Mr. Leno, I speak to you because millions hear your voice, and I need them to remember Aka." Jay's jaw tightened. In that moment, the walls of comedy fell. The audience saw Jay smile faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. He cleared his throat. "President Traoré, I knew a man once. He lost everything when the bank took his farm. He was my neighbor when I was a kid." Jay paused, his voice almost breaking. "He used to fix my bike with grease-covered hands. Then one winter, they moved away. I never saw him again. His daughter, she cried the day they left." Traoré nodded slowly. "Then you understand." Jay nodded back, his usual quick wit replaced with a quiet pain. The cameras caught something rare. Jay Leno, without a wall between himself and the world. "Mr. Leno," Traoré said softly, "I have not come to shame anyone. I have come to ask for something." Jay leaned in. "Go on." "I want you," Traoré continued, "to come to Burkina Faso, to meet Idrissa, to see Acha, not as a celebrity, not for television, just as a man looking another man in the eye. The request hung in the air. Jay's mouth opened, then closed. He looked down at his hands, fiddling with his wedding ring. "This week?" Jay asked finally. Trey's eyes did not waver. Yes, this week. Somewhere deep inside, Jay knew the trip would change him. What he didn't know was that it would also break him. Jay sat alone in his dressing room after the show. The laughter from earlier felt like it belonged to another lifetime. He replayed Traoré's words in his head, just as a man looking another man in the eye. On his desk lay a handwritten note from one of the producers. "We can politely decline. Too risky." But something inside Jay wouldn't let him ignore the invitation. He thought of Aicha, the little girl he'd never met, yet couldn't stop seeing in his mind. Her tiny face blurred with the memory of his old neighbor's daughter, crying in the cold. Jay picked up the phone. "Book me on the next flight to Burkina Faso," he told his assistant. There was a long pause on the other end. "Are you sure?" Jay closed his eyes. "I've never been more sure." The trip was unplanned, rushed, and strangely quiet. No press, no entourage, just Jay, a small suitcase, and a mind full of questions. The plane hummed softly as it cut through the dark. Jay stared out the window, watching the clouds drift below. Every time he tried to think of what he'd say to Trey, his thoughts went back to Akka. What would he even say to her? "Hello, I'm a man who tells jokes for a living." It felt so small, so useless. Somewhere over the Atlantic, Jay realized this wasn't just a trip. This was a reckoning. The heat hit him first, thick and unyielding. The air smelled faintly of earth and wood smoke. At the small airport, there was no red carpet, no flashing cameras, just a single black SUV and a tall man in a plain shirt waiting for him. "Mr. Leno," the man greeted warmly, "I am here on behalf of President Traoré. Welcome to Burkina Faso." Jay smiled faintly and shook his hand. "Thank you. Where's the president?" The man nodded toward the horizon. "He is with Idrissa," he said. "It is better you see before we speak." Jay slid into the SUV, his chest tightening. He didn't know why, but he sensed that whatever lay ahead would leave him forever changed. The SUV stopped in front of a modest single-story building. It wasn't the presidential palace Jay had imagined. No guards in formation, no marble halls, just a few soldiers standing casually by the door. Inside the room was simple but warm. Ibrahim Traoré stood by a wooden table wearing his familiar military fatigues. His eyes were calm yet carried a depth that made Jay's chest tighten. "Mr. Leno," Traoré said with a genuine smile, extending his hand. "Welcome. I'm glad you came." Jay shook his hand, surprised at the firm grip and steady gaze. "You didn't give me much choice," Jay said with a small smile, trying to lighten the air. Traoré didn't laugh, but his expression softened. "Some things you have to see with your own eyes." They left the city before dawn, the SUV bouncing over uneven. Rhodes Traoré sat beside Jay, speaking quietly about his country, its struggles, and its hope. Jay listened more than he spoke. The sun rose slowly, bathing the dusty road in gold. Children walked barefoot along the roadside, some carrying water buckets, almost as big as they were. "We're going to see Idrissa's family," Traoré finally said. Jay frowned. Idrissa Traoré's gaze stayed fixed on the horizon. "A young soldier, he saved my life." But he paused, his voice dropping. "He didn't make it home last month." Jay's throat went dry. He sensed this wasn't just a visit, it was a pilgrimage. The SUV stopped at the edge of a small village. Clay houses stood under the shade of acacia trees. The air was still, almost heavy. Traoré led Jay through a narrow path until they reached a modest home. An elderly woman stepped out, her back slightly bent, her hands trembling. "This is Idrissa's mother," Traoré said softly. The woman's eyes, deep, tired, but still burning with strength, met Jay's. Without a word, she reached for his hand. Holding it tightly, she spoke in a quiet voice, and Traoré translated, "My son said, Americans laugh a lot. I'm glad you came." He wanted to see the world laugh, even if he couldn't. Jay felt a lump rise in his throat. For the first time in years, he had no joke, no quick line, just silence and the weight of her grief in his palm. Inside the dimly lit home, Idrissa's mother brought out a small wooden box. She placed it gently on the table between Jay and Traoré, her fingers trembling. "This is for you," she said through Traoré's translation. Jay hesitated before lifting the lid. Inside was a faded photo of a young soldier in uniform, Idrissa, smiling shilly. Beneath it lay a small folded piece of paper. Traoré nodded for Jay to open it. The handwriting was shaky, the ink slightly smudged. It was a letter written in English. "Mr. Leno," it began, "I watch you every week online. You make me laugh, even when my friends are gone. If I don't come home, please tell people to keep laughing. The world needs it." Jay's hands shook. He blinked hard, but the tears still came. The room felt too small, the air too heavy. For once, he wished for a punchline, but there was none. They sat in silence until Jay finally spoke. "Why give this? To me?" His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. Idrissa's mother answered without hesitation. "Because my son believed you could carry his smile to the world." Jay looked at Traoré, his voice breaking. "I'm just a comedian." Traoré's expression was steady but soft. "No, Jay, you're a bridge. Laughter crosses borders. My people fight for life. But life is not only about survival, it's about joy." Idris knew that. Jay nodded slowly, clutching the letter like it might vanish. "Then I'll carry it, I promise." In that moment, the trip stopped being an unexpected detour. It became a mission. And in Jay's heart, he knew some promises are heavier than they look. As they left the house, the village children ran up, curious about the visitor. One boy tugged at Jay's sleeve, holding a small soccer ball patched with tape. "You play?" the boy asked, in halting English. Jay smiled faintly, wiping his eyes. "Not well, kid, but I'll try." They kicked the ball back and forth in the dusty yard, laughter mixing with the warm afternoon air. For a brief moment, Jay felt the weight lift until he looked up and saw Trang quietly from under a tree. There was pride in the president's eyes, but also something else. A quiet urgency, as though he knew that time was running out for something Jay didn't yet understand. The game ended, the children ran off, and the SUV waited. Jay looked back at the house, then at the ball in his hands. Somehow, he felt like he was carrying much more than just stitched leather. That night, Trop invited Jay into a quiet corner of the guest house. A single lamp lit the table between them. On it sat a small video camera. "I want to record something for your people," Trop said softly. Jay leaned back, curious. "My people?" "Yes," Trop replied, "the ones who laugh because of you. The ones who think Burkina Faso is just a name on a map. I want them to see we are real and that we feel." The president pressed the record button. He spoke in English, his voice steady, but warm. "To the people watching, laughter is a gift that costs nothing but gives everything. We may live far apart, but we share the same sun, the same moon. My friend Jay came here and reminded us that joy still exists even in the hardest days." He paused, his eyes glistening. "And for Idrissa May, his smile live forever through you." Jay sat frozen, realizing that this wasn't just a message. It was a bridge between worlds, and he was the one holding it together. The week had passed too quickly. On the last morning, the village gathered to see Jay off. Idrissa's mother came forward, holding the patched soccer ball. She placed it in Jay's hands. "For you," she said simply. Jay swallowed hard. "I can't take this. It's his." She smiled faintly. "Then keep it safe. Let it remind you why you came." The air was thick with the sound of drums and low singing. Children waved, some smiling, some not. Jay tried to memorize every face, every sound, every breath of warm African wind. As they drove away, the dust rising behind the SUV, Jay didn't speak. Tro glanced at him, sensing the storm of emotion beneath that quiet exterior. "Some goodbyes," Tro said gently, "are the start of another journey." Jay nodded, holding the ball tightly. He knew this wasn't over, not even close. 3 nights later, Jay stood on stage in Los Angeles. The crowd expected jokes, but he began with a story about a young soldier named Idrissa, about a mother's strength, about a leader who carried his people's heart in his hands. He pulled the patched soccer ball from under the table. The audience went silent. "This," Jay said, voice breaking, "is more than a ball. It's a reminder that laughter and love are the only things worth passing on." By the time he finished Idrissa's letter, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Even the cameras seemed to breathe slower. Somewhere across the ocean, Ibrahim Traoré was watching and smiling. My dear viewers, if Idris's story touched you even a little, don't just click away. Honor him, share his smile with the world. Hit subscribe so we can keep telling stories that matter. Like this video to let more people hear about hope. And please drop a comment telling me what you will carry forward. Just as I now carry Idris's laughter, let's fill this world with more bridges and fewer walls.